Guys, join us as we look into a question that has been capturing the attention of economists, analysts, and citizens alike. Is America truly defying the odds with its apparent economic resilience, or is it all just a well-crafted masquerade? To answer this, we'll examine the numbers and unravel the factors that will uncover the truth behind this economic facade. With that said, let's get started. For a while now, there has been anticipation among many individuals regarding a potential recession impacting the United States. Economists have been discussing the likelihood of an approaching recession, with Dr. Bang suggesting that the odds are nearly 100%. However, an intriguing situation is unfolding as the U.S. economy has exhibited growth in the initial 2 quarters. Specifically, the Q1 GDP showed a 2% increase, and the advance estimate for Q2 indicated a growth of 2.4%. At first glance, this may appear as an economy that is showing resilience. Perhaps Joe Biden's perspective is proving accurate, and the economy continues to thrive. Yet there's a deeper aspect of this scenario that requires attention. Looking back to 2022, the United States entered a technical recession, characterized by 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. The term recession was redefined by the White House, erasing it from historical records. However, it was a recession by definition, as the economy contracted. In the present context, a trend has emerged. The economy is growing, and the U.S. consumer seems robust. The unemployment rate remains low at 3.5%, even after the Federal Reserve elevated interest rates to 5.5%. With employed people having disposable income, spending could bolster the economy. However, a CNBC survey found that 92% of Americans are curbing expenditures, indicating an underlying issue. Government deficit spending appears to sustain consumption levels. In 2022, the Biden administration spent a staggering $6.27 trillion, 25% of the GDP. Around $250 of every GDP $10 stemmed from the U.S. government, possibly more. The effort to avert a recession becomes a mathematical equation. If U.S. consumers control spending, President Biden can inject funds. This reveals a blind spot. Fiscal policy's role was somewhat overlooked. The U.S. government can extend the issue by increasing borrowing for deficit spending, trading recession for sustained inflation and perpetual deficits. The federal budget spending sheds light on the economy's stability. In 2022, the government acquired $5 trillion in revenue and disbursed $6.5 trillion, resulting in a $1.5 trillion deficit. Spending categories impact the tangible economy. For instance, $1.2 trillion for Social Security benefits retirees, circulating within the real economy, contributing to the GDP. The same applies to defense and Medicare, channeling funds to individuals and corporations, and fostering consumption. To sustain the economy, President Biden can boost borrowing and spending. The current fiscal year saw $5.3 trillion spent, up $471 billion from the prior year. Nearly $500 billion infused into the economy. The inflow essentially manifests as demand injected by the government. This spending continues with significant treasury issuance. This critical purpose is to offset recessionary tendencies. The federal government's budget displays a substantial gap, with revenue falling short of spending. Biden's administration generated $3.4 trillion in revenue, with spending at $4.8 trillion, a $1.4 trillion deficit. This gap is 170% larger than the previous years, indicating extensive borrowing entangled with deficit spending, bolstering the economy. While many Americans face financial challenges, the economy remains resilient. This is due to deficit spending. Congress has staved off recession through borrowing, perpetuating the economy's well-being. Globally, economic signs show deceleration. Europe's economy slips into recession. China faces deflation. The U.S. trade gap widens, and exports decline, indicating reduced foreign consumer demand. Domestic government spending, not consumer resilience, holds the economy together. The government's strategy is deficit spending. The administration borrows to avoid recession. The U.S. government's ability to borrow is seemingly boundless, maintaining economic stability. A debt ceiling bill suspends the limit until 2025, allowing unlimited funds. This proactive approach is evident through substantial U.S. Treasury sales. Our economic landscape defies the traditional notion of a free market economy. While we often think of the Federal Reserve as the sole driver of our economy through tools like interest rates and quantitative easing, The complete picture reveals the significant influence of government fiscal policies. This is evident in the practice of borrowing funds from the global market and injecting them directly into the U.S. economy. Contrary to the belief that the Federal Reserve's pursuit of higher rates and substantial bond sales is solely to combat inflation, it could also aim to prevent further escalation caused by deficit spending. The Federal Reserve will likely continue to maintain elevated interest rates well into 2024 to counterbalance government spending. Interestingly, this very government spending acts as the cornerstone upholding the economy. Viewing it from this perspective, it's likely that an upcoming recession might be deferred for a considerable period. This delay could extend to 2024 or even reach 2025, possibly post-election. An examination of the Consumer Price Index inflation reveals a rebound to 3.2%, with core inflation at a persistent 4.7%. This signifies that heightened prices are here to stay. As a result, the likelihood of the Federal Reserve lowering rates shortly remains remote. But how long can President Biden continue the approach of deferring challenges down the line? Is there an upcoming recession? Naturally, the current scenario isn't sustainable indefinitely. The increasing interest payments on the national debt indicate the complexity of the situation. We observe a remarkable surge in activity since 2022. The U.S. government is now allocating close to $1 trillion annually solely for servicing interest payments. This situation arises due to the accumulation of substantial borrowed funds at elevated interest rates. Additionally, there exists a tangible limit to the quantum of money that can be borrowed. Predictions suggest that by 2053, net interest costs could comprise 40% of revenues. However, there's a likelihood of this threshold being reached sooner, amplifying the urgency to address borrowing. Should interest costs escalate to encompass 50 or even 60% of federal revenues, it could accelerate the journey toward default. In the near term, though, the U.S. government can continue borrowing considerably without immediate visible consequences. They can secure additional funds to meet interest payments, maintaining this course until 2025. For a recession to materialize, a substantial triggering event would be necessary. This might entail a black swan event, possibly a banking crisis triggering a chain reaction, or a downturn in commercial real estate. The exact nature of the event remains uncertain. Until such an occurrence, it's plausible that the trajectory of economic ascent may persist. So what does this signify? Essentially, the markets might continue to escalate. The S&P 500 could approach and potentially exceed all-time highs. Major financial institutions, like JP Morgan, anticipate a record-breaking S&P 500. Nearly half of their clients anticipate new all-time highs by the year's end. Notably, Goldman Sachs has assigned a mere 20% odds to a recession in 2024, reflecting an optimistic outlook. However, caution is important. While indicators such as the yield curve signal concerns, a melt-up remains possible as people chase higher returns. The recent release of the leading economic indicator by the Conference Board indicates an upcoming economic recession. This is highlighted by a considerable decline in economic activity, like the 2020 lockdown levels. Notably, real GDP remains on an upward trajectory. Consider the trend over the past 15 years. The leading economic indicator's downturn precedes GDP diving below 0% by at least 18 months. This lag effect is a consideration often overlooked. Moreover, the current environment of virtually limitless deficit spending extends until 2025. The prolonged period of deficit spending has given rise to uncertainty, prompting a cautious stance. Shorting the markets is not favored in the face of this uncertainty. In the event of a modest decline ranging from 10 to 20%, government intervention could potentially mitigate the consequences. This uncertainty emphasizes the importance of a balanced approach, considering two scenarios: one in which Biden maintains expansive spending to uphold the zombie economy, and another where market instability prevails. Interestingly, the current landscape offers a range of choices. Money markets are currently yielding about 5%, a rate that garnered significant attention a few years ago. These actual yields offer a tangible benefit. This liquidity acts as a safeguard, providing a means to re-enter the market in case of a crash. On the flip side, if stock values continue to rise consistently, there's potential for further gains. The most substantial risk emerges from market growth itself. Given the existing uncertainties, preparing for both potential outcomes appears to be a wise approach. Alright guys, that wraps up our video. Before you go, we'll love to know what you think about this in the comment section. Also, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more.